All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our last live workshop of the week, Introduction to Biopharmaceuticals. I'm your state parliamentarian, Dorian Ho, and we're so excited to have one of our industry partners, Bristol Myers Squibb, here to tell us about some careers in pharmacy and also some insights about drug development from the industry perspective. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to our presenters today to introduce themselves.
Sure, thank you, Dorian. Hi, everyone. Welcome to these unique times and great that you are joining us today. So my name is Lynn. I'm here with my partner lead, Steven Nicotra. We represent Bristol Myers Squibb. So we're a company that focuses on patients with serious long-term diseases. And for example, they can be patients with cancer or rheumatoid arthritis and more. Currently, I am a supplier relationship manager. I handle and oversee contract manufacturing sites that produce our drugs. I have a background in biomedical engineering and business, and I have been with BMS for almost 5 years. So I'll hand it over to Steven to also introduce himself.
Oh, like Lynn said, I'm Steven Nicotra. I'm a senior associate scientist with the Genetic and Occupational Toxicology Department at BMS. My degrees are in animal biotechnology and conservation, and I have an MBA. I've been in the BMS research and development for 13 years in varying roles, which included general toxicology, reproductive toxicology, and finally now genetic toxicology. When we get to the story segment, I'll go more in detail with me, a bit too much because I'm a pretty big storyteller. So we'll get to the next slide. At BMS, everything is patient-focused. A few years ago, our company launched an internal campaign called Who Do We Work For? They gave out picture frames and other items branded with Who Do You Work For? And asked us to think about exactly what we were doing. This was deeply profound ask because quickly, me and my cube mates, when we were unpacking everything, instantly thought of all the people in our lives that have been affected by serious disease like cancer, cardiovascular disease, or immunological disorders. I would assume everyone on this call could immediately do the same thing. That is what drives each and every one of us at BMS. And when I go back to work on site, I'll have that picture frame with my grandmother in it who died of cancer, staring back at me to reaffirm that what we do matters and that we help millions of patients worldwide every year. Next slide.
So each of us have our own reasons why we work for our patients. And our company mission states this very clearly. It's to discover, develop, and deliver innovative medicines that help patients prevail over serious diseases. Historically, our company was a traditional big pharma. You may know us for some of our blockbuster drugs, such as penicillin. However, we have evolved over the decades to really focus on patients suffering from long-term diseases. Our current CEO, Giovanni Caforio, has been one of the spearheaders in transforming this company into what we are today, a very highly patient-focused company that are now considered leaders in the industry.
Now let's get into some of the science. Our main focus is oncology, hematology, cardiovascular, immunology, and fibrosis. This may seem like a lot, but there's a lot much more overlap than, say, a decade ago when we were like in endocrinology and oncology. We would have completely different teams working on completely different stuff. It was just very cumbersome. This has led us to becoming the industry leading leader in oncology and hematology. For instance, Eliquis, our market leading blood thinning drug, is in the cardiovascular therapeutic area. It has shown great advancements from the current standard of care warfarin and does not require routine monitor. We are shifting our company from a traditional pharmaceutical company, which usually works in the chemistry space, to a biopharmaceutical company by exploring treatments through biologics and cell therapy. So to get everyone on the same page, we'll get a basic understanding of what I'm talking about. Chemistry is just like what you'd think. It's routinely referred to as small molecules, and it's a chemist in a lab doing a synthetic chemical pathway to go from point A to a drug. These chemicals are small and they can actually interact with cellular within the cellular system. So this actually affects your body chemistry. So just say like a disease causes an upregulation in protein, we can create a drug that would then downregulate said protein and bring you back to a normal state. Biologics are a little bit more complex. Biologics are large molecules. They don't interact with the cellular systems. They interact with like whole body systems, like your immune system. An example of this is our drug Opdivo. Opdivo blocks PD-1 protein. PD-1 protein is responsible for preventing the body's immune system's T cells from doing their job of attacking inflamed and cancerous cells. This is where like the biopharmaceutical comes to play, because these biologics are traditionally made through things like tissue culture processes in order to create the compound. And this leads to a bunch of new challenges that we never faced with small molecules. They're really hard to manufacture. Sterility is like key. And it's very important to keep the product to its like utmost quality, so then the patients aren't negatively affected. And then we have the new kid on the block at BMS, cell therapy. Cell therapies are the, we can take the cells out of a patient and or donor, take them into a lab, modify them. And then once we modify them, we can ship them back to where the patient is, and then put them back in, and then the new cells will then help the body fight disease better. We do this with T cells, CAR T cells routinely. So we'll take the patient's T cells, put them on steroids, put them back in the body, and then those T cells not only fight the cancer that's in the body, they also start teaching your body how to fight the cancer appropriately. So Lynn's going to continue with the next slide.
So as a pharmaceutical company, we're not always making and discovering drugs. We're also really directly giving back and helping out in those across the world. And one of the biggest foundations that we actually have is the Global Hope BMS Foundation. It's a patient assistance foundation that provides approximately $2 billion in free medicine to patients in need. We also treat cancers in areas of high HIV prevalence, and also train healthcare professionals in treating thousands of children in South and East Africa. So I would say that prior to COVID, we did send some of our colleagues, local colleagues here in New Jersey, out into Africa to understand the logistics of things, the healthcare, how professionals are treating their patients there, and what are the additional contributions that we can make to have a direct impact to the world. So this is one of our biggest examples of how BMS is actually contributing back directly.
So we're ultimately here at HOSA to show you all that we're a great industry to cater your studies toward for a rewarding career. It's like an inside joke at BMS that no one actually starts a career in biopharmaceuticals. You just kind of stumble into it. So we, as a leading industry leader, if our teams have like an idea, they will have full access to cutting edge technology, contacts, and any other resources that you would need to fully flesh that idea. Also, another reason we're a great place to look at to work. As alluded to earlier studies, we're biopharma, not big pharma. Like, this might not sound important to everyone, but this is just, it really lets us be nimble. We don't have like wasted efforts anymore. So then we can then be a lot more patient focused and get our compounds out way quicker than we used to in the past. And then the interesting part is our workplace consists of people of all kinds of backgrounds. We have members of our teams that have very HOSA-oriented educations. This includes like MDs, RNs, pharmacists, PharmD, epidemiologists, veterinarians. I bet you could pick out any healthcare profession, and I would probably find an analog that I could say, like, yes, you could probably do this job at BMS. But not only healthcare, because like, yes, you're in HOSA, but I assume you have interest outside of this. We hire tons of MBAs, logistic experts, engineers, quality assurance, writers, lawyers. Like, we have everything that you would ever want to do in one company. I don't know if Lynn knows this. In New Brunswick, we literally have a fire truck. We don't hire firefighters. It's all volunteer based, but like, we literally have a fire truck. It's like nuts. It's such a cool place to work. So the possibilities are truly endless. Next slide, Lynn.
Thanks, Stephen. And to really highlight and piggyback off of the diversity of backgrounds, it's not just the educational backgrounds, but we're really making a lot of strides to become more inclusive, more diverse as a company. So what we have at BMS is what we call PBRGs, for People and Business Resource Groups. And this is grouped based on all the diversity that we're really trying to highlight that are what we consider the underdogs. So we do have, for example, Be Now, which is women's club, Black organizations. We also have Cultivating Leadership for Millennials and Beyond. We also have different abled workplaces, OLA, which is also a Spanish club, and also an Asian network, as well as Pride Alliance and a Veterans Community Network. So these PBRGs are kind of like clubs at our company, but they also provide a lot of cultivating leadership workshops and creating the exposure and spotlight needed in the workforce and the talent pool in a lot of these PBRGs. So me and Steven are actually part of CLIMB, which is Cultivating Leadership and Innovation for Millennials and Beyond. And we are looking to cultivate the younger generation here, and hence why we are here with ForHoSA, is to look at you younger people, the future talent to the future of biopharmaceuticals. So we do champion a lot of initiatives like STEM awareness, which is where HOSA fits in. We also seek on sustainability for our company and also patient advocacy. So this is kind of in a nutshell of what we really look at as diversity in our company. So we'll move forward.
And this is Giovanni, our CEO. And he always strives and says, we have so much more to do to help our patients prevail from serious disease. We hope that when you start to make your decisions on what you want to study and eventually decide what discipline to pursue a career in, you can at least think of the biopharmaceutical industry as a suitable place to work, and hopefully BMS specifically. Thank you so much, and here's Lynn.
And I will just tell you, he does have an Italian accent.
That's awesome.
I know, it sounds really friendly. All right, so we do have a BMS Foundation philanthropic video that we would like to share with you to kind of highlight the health inequities around the world and what the BMS Foundation has been doing for these patients across the globe. So I'm gonna start the video. Dorian, let me know if they cannot hear. Thanks for watching.
So another reason we're here is just to tell our stories, so then give you some perspective of how we got to where we got and answer any questions. Because like I said, we all kind of stumble into biopharmaceuticals. So we're hoping to plant the seed that we're here, but I'll just give us a little background on what we do and what our day-to-day is. So I was at my first large lecture in college, an introduction to animal science at Delaware Valley College, which apparently is a university now, which I didn't even know until I started looking stuff back up. But Dr. S, she asked the class of about 100, who wants to be a veterinarian? And without pause, every single person in that lecture raised their hand, mine included. Then she calmly then stated, maybe 4 of you at best will become vets. I didn't pay any mind. I was 18. I knew everything. I will become a vet regardless. You know what I mean? So it didn't really worry me. Well, Dr. S, who ended up being a super awesome person, asset to my life, 100% correct. Literally 4 of us are vets right now. I am not one of them, clearly. Luckily for me, the plan included taking jobs and internships at several different kinds of places to get an understanding of where I could work as a vet at first. So 1 week in a practicing vet's office, and I was out. Like everyone knows what happens in a vet office, and oddly enough, 6'4", 300-pound football player me couldn't take the emotion of what happens in a vet office. It was just draining. I give them all the credit in the world, but it just wasn't for me. So I was like, okay, I'll become a field biologist. It took about a week counting toads to realize that that's not too fun. And I did the research, and it was not going to pay off the debt that I was racking up at said Delaware Valley College. So happenstance had me apply to Biopharmaceuticals. It's now defunct pharmaceutical that was bought by, I think, Merck. But it just, as soon as I got in there, I found my place. Like, these people had a shared mission to help people prevail from serious disease. Like, I was hooked. So I graduated. I then took a job at a contract research organization, which is awesome. I would say everyone should start at a smaller level company like those, because then you can learn all of the assets you need to do from the ground up in order to have a really good solid base of understanding to get like the big job. I was there for a year after learning mostly what I needed to do to get to the next job. And then I applied for a BMS job, and luckily that's where I've been ever since. I want to emphasize that I'm a non-PhD scientist. If you guys know about biopharmaceuticals, like the thought is that you need a PhD to be an R&D. And that was true 13 years ago for the most part. Like, I literally started cleaning rooms. I took whatever job I could get. But slowly I proved that my brain did indeed work. I progressed to being a bench scientist, assay development, and now I'm a full-fledged project manager in a role that would traditionally have been held by a person with a PhD. So not only did I work hard to get to that point, but the company has progressed now to the point where we routinely hire non-PhDs for these type of roles, because there was no reason to gatekeep this level because of education. The only thing that I would caution is, if you do want to get into this this type of work, and your goal is to keep moving up, I would get a PhD, because there are certain limitations to the roles I'll ever have in this company. So the fun stuff. I'm a genetic toxicologist. Basically, a genetic toxicologist uses computer modeling, in vitro assays, and other biological assays to determine whether or not a chemical, or in this case a drug, would have a likelihood of causing mutations or damaging human DNA. So mutations, like, I always thought about like what the movies showed you, like mutations are going to cause this big bad monster or awesome fighting teenage turtles. That's not the case. I learned that at work. Mutations also actually lead to cancer states most commonly. So that's why I'm measuring mutations. I'm looking to make sure that our compounds don't have the inherent risk of causing cancer in our patients. The most common assay I use for that is an Ames assay. We take bioengineered bacteria. We take its gene away for it to be able to make its own food and grow. And then we expose it to our chemical and add it to an agar plate. Everything inherently, like right now, cells in your body are mutating. There's a base mutation level for everything. So some of the plates will have bacteria grow, like the control plates will have a normal background level. But then the chemical treated plates will either show it's mutagenic and have a significantly increased amount of bacteria grow on there, or it'll be non-mutagenic and it would look similar as your control plates. So, so that's like our big assay. And then at that point, like the compound, if it is positive, is labeled mutagenic, which is always interesting. We have several other assays to help fully profile the compound, determine whether the compound will also affect like DNA replication and or normal genome like mutations. And so basically, if I do my job correctly, I am preventing really promising compounds from actually getting through, because my job is like a safety profile job. Like it's like, oh, there's the cat. So I'm like yay or nay, is this drug safe? Which is always interesting, because the chemist who worked painstakingly for years on that compound, I like crushed their hopes and dreams by that. But then they can go back, refigure out the compound to like remove the mutagenic structures, and then hopefully get to a promising compound. The most important part is my job is safety science, and BMS fully supports our role. So even though it is like data is not always 100% positive, negative, there's always like gray areas in data. They really take our expert judgment on it. And even though like sometimes you can always argue for or against something else, they'll take our final answer. So like BMS doesn't pressure us to like get things through. They want it to be as safe as possible, so then we can then help our patients out as safe as possible. So that's what I do. We can get in more detail on Q&A if you want to, but here's Lynn.
Sure, great stories, Stephen. So just a quick kind of more story-like background on how and where I came about to becoming in my role currently. So like many of you, when I was in high school, I initially wanted to pursue medical school and become a doctor in the field. So I actually pursued a bioengineering degree in my undergrad. During that time, I volunteered and did a bunch of internships at ophthalmology centers that usually help diagnose kids with eye issues, and also briefly worked as a caller for California Smokers Helpline. And at that point, after I graduated college, I ended up working on the field and in offices at an orthopedics manufacturing site startup company in San Diego. I thoroughly enjoyed that experience. It was at a manufacturing site for lumbar and cervical medical devices. We also manufacture surgical devices. So I was part of a lot of the quality and processing pieces, as well as the packaging. And so during these experiences, I did realize that I really liked solutionizing problems on the floor, making processes more efficient, more safe. And at that site, I really enjoyed just working with a close group of people, being able to have like multiple hats at a startup. So this really does have an ultimate impact to the patient, because we're shipping, surgical devices that will be implanted to the patient. And so after about like a year and a half of working with them, I decided to pursue a master's in biomedical engineering and in business. And after that, I actually joined BMS in 2016 as a rotational associate in the product development and supply organization. So I had the opportunity to move across different departments every 6 to 8 months. And I've jumped between logistics, science and technology, product strategy, and also going back onto the manufacturing floor, but in this case, more for biopharmaceutical drug manufacturing. So these experiences, I've had a lot of fun meeting a lot of different people and learning the whole process of biopharmaceuticals. And it's led me to my permanent position, which I really like operations. And so I am right now a supplier relationship manager. We do hire or contract with external manufacturing sites in our network, and I oversee those contracts and ensure that the operations of the product and operations are moving efficiently with that contractor. And we're really making sure those products go out the door and hit the market to the patient as efficiently as possible. So those are just kind of like the tidbits of what I do in this role. So just to highlight, Stephen and I come from very different groups, very different departments of BMS, but they all have a part of the piece of the entire puzzle. And we do have insights on some other areas, other departments as well. So we will open the floor to any questions you may have about Bristol Myers Squibb or the pharmaceutical industry in general.
Right. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. You can also direct message me to ask them. And you can even unmute if you feel comfortable sharing a question. This is a safe space. We want to encourage all of you to really engage. And so I did get one of my first questions here. Could you speak to some of the projects you've specifically done in the past? Anything that comes up as particularly memorable or rewarding?
So personally, I'm in safety science, so I don't start projects, I touch every project. So it does become a little routine. So the most memorable ones, unfortunately for my chemists, are the ones that have problems with them, that we need to like actually get down into the science and like develop new assay work. Because, for instance, I was working with a compound that we use an attachment cell line for tissue culture, and the compound detaches protein in the extracellular matrix. And so you can't use an attachment cell line if your cells aren't attaching. And so then I was able to like develop an assay to that essentially did the same thing as our other assay, just in a different system that we never validated before. So like 99% of my work is probably pretty routine, kind of get it through like same assays. Because like for instance, the Ames assay has been done the same way since 1970. It's great. It's like I think it's got 92% concordance to human cancer risk. So it's just something that is never going to change because it's just so robust. But when the problems happen, that's where I really get to dive back into like the science and the being able to develop things from the ground up. It's pretty awesome.
Another question
sorry.
that we got.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to go on to the next question here about any recommendations you have about how to get involved in pharmaceuticals at a high school level.
I have some thoughts, Lynn, but if you want to go first, you can. You're good.
At a high school level, to get into that, I would say definitely still stay with HOSA. And then also the other pieces, really getting involved in the STEM areas, STEM events. I think those are the biggest ones. They have very good events that we are also involved in as well. So we try to touch on those points. And if you really want to get more understanding of pharma, especially a little more exposure, BMS is willing to take that feedback and think about what are ways we can continue to provide that. We had some ideas shuttled around in our first initial conversations with your HOSA advisors. And we're really working through to provide those opportunities. So at a high school level, definitely keep the conversations going with anyone that you may know is a part of pharmaceuticals. I don't know, Stephen, if you know any other additional resources out there.
There are early career resources on our BMS website. You have to just find it. I don't know exactly where it's at, but our HR does a good job of updating it. Co-ops and internships are generally at the college level, but through these type of meetings we're having or conferences, you can get to know us and all that stuff, and we can then help steer you in the right direction. Personally, in New Brunswick, when we weren't dealing with COVID, Rutgers has a annual, I believe, in the summer science boot camp. I don't know exactly how you join it, but I know that we partner with them, and like the students come in and we give them a full like tour of our labs. We go through some experiments in our toxicology setting and things like that. So that's like a specific example that I can say. And then we can always get people in touch with our early career development people, because they'll have like, if it's not like Rutgers is so here, and it would probably work for a lot of New Jersey students here, but like we have sites in California, Connecticut, almost every country. Like it's kind of crazy. So just communication. And I'd like to get feedback from this. Like if you guys want to learn about something new, please feel free to ask us, because then we can then find the right person. Like if you want to learn about how small molecules are developed, then I can find a medicinal chemist. Or if you want to find out about how biologic manufacturing works, we can get an engineer from the floor. So like, if you keep the dialogue open with us too, we can then find exactly the person that you want to learn more about. And I don't know if I should say this, Lynn, but our like long-term goals is to hopefully have some sort of workshops, maybe more routinely than just at the Spring Leadership Conference. But that's long-term goals, and we'll see how we get there. But hope that helps.
All right, well, thank you for that. Yes, we do at the state level, I believe, host events in biomedical lab science and the knowledge test in pharmacology that starts at the regional level. So, I mean, we here in HOSA are also here to support your pharmaceutical aspirations. Another question was, what kinds of skills do you use on a daily basis in your job?
Something I never thought I would use, because I'm a biologist by trade, I now use a lot of chemistry. So lessons learned is pay attention to everything, because you have no idea what you're going to use in the future. Our biology turned into to prevent a lot of things like to prevent having to do extra work. We now do a lot of computer modeling, and that's all based off of chemical structures and reactions and things like that. So I had to relearn chemistry from the beginning, because it was like 13 years since college, and that's a relatively new area for genetic toxicology. So like that's been a challenge. And just writing is in everything, and I would never have guessed that. So like really pay attention to that kind of stuff, because if you can't communicate, you're not going to succeed in anywhere. And that's so true at our company too. The good writers, the good communicators are like very upfront, they keep progressing. They really get out there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think communication is definitely key. We're somewhat of more of a bureaucratic company, so there's a lot of layers, a lot of matrix teams that you have to work across. And when we mean matrix, we're working with different groups across each other. Every day I touch point with at least 4 or 5 different departments leads. And they could be from supply chain to quality. We also have our science and technology. And I would say in the position that I'm in, it's a bit of a balance between science and business. I do manage certain areas where, like, how much are we spending in terms of budget, and then how can we balance that between preventing inventory loss or preventing, like, how can we calculate it out, what our drug substance losses, our inputs are. So it's just really a bit of a balance that I've been able to use both the biomedical engineering degree and the business degree to really combine that and figure out and move forward. And like Steven said, communication is key, being able to learn other people's languages as well, because you're working with very technical groups, and then you're also working with very business-like groups. So they prefer very different styles of communication to get the point across. So really, understanding and having a little more empathy with how other people are thinking really gets this company moving forward with what we do here.
That was all. I was going to then stress empathy too. It's yeah. No one, if you really need to think about everyone else in your group and in all the other groups, because like everyone is we're so streamlined and we're so busy now that you have to really empathize with everyone to be able to get the most out of people, because you have your other people that like are like crack the whip kind of people. And I feel like I get way more out of people because I am like I understand what they need, or I can like give and take and things like that. So interpersonal skills are crucial in our industry too.
Right. So any other members have questions, you can put them in the chat. Just a reminder of that. You mentioned in your presentation about biopharma versus big pharma. Could you sort of explain that difference there and how BMS sort of differs from that more industrial standard?
Stephen, I'll let you answer that.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? You broke up a little bit for me. You just wanted to know the main differences?
The sort of difference, how BMS sort of...
okay, so 13 years ago, we had middle manager after middle manager. That was just the normal pharmaceutical way. There's a lot of waste. A lot of 18 people did the same job that maybe 4 people could do. And biotech companies traditionally don't work like that. Biotech are very like cutting edge. They're very like, think of like startups and things like that. And so we did a whole bunch of like MBA style like efficiency programs back in like I think 2012, I think ish, that just realized that we weren't helping our patients because of all these layers and all these things. So we flattened out our organization. We became more nimble. We then let people like I can shadow and cross train in other things to help people out because like maybe when I'm a little slow, I can then help out other people. There's just a lot more opportunity now in our company to make a difference and to contribute. Whether you want to keep moving up the corporate ladder if that's your thing, or if you want to like produce good research and like draft like academic papers and publish, you can do that thing. Like we're just very almost academic in at least in R&D now, where it used to be very wasteful. So so we basically made pharmaceutical into biopharma, because I don't even know if anyone else uses the biopharma moniker. But we really wanted to mimic biotechnology companies because they were just so much more efficient at what they were doing.
Yeah, I think now there's a little less layers compared to previous years. So we're allowed to kind of move across different departments more often. We also have assessed our portfolios over the past decade, and you will notice that based on our BMS.com history site, we used to do some blockbuster drugs, and now we've sold some of those assets off. And now we're more focused on, like we mentioned before, like long-term diseases. And so it's really kind of narrowing down what are we truly focused on to keep ourselves nimble in the industry as well.
Yeah. Good old Dr. S also told me that I was going to get laid off approximately 3 times on average because biopharma or big pharma is like that. So like we would do diabetes and then all of a sudden we would then shift to whatever was like the hot thing at that time. Well, at that point, if you have diabetes experts, like they would all lose their jobs because they're not oncology experts. And like that's how it worked. So now we've become very more focused. And like I said, I've been here 13 years. I don't ever feel unsafe and things like that. So like if you ever hear about people like, especially people from the 90s or like your parents and things like that work in biopharmaceutical, that was like the big thing. But our company has really progressed to a more of a like collaborative, lean, agile organization. And that's like we're such a huge company, but we don't feel like a huge company. Like we're like a family. It's a very interesting dynamic. I have friends and family that work at other large pharmaceuticals, and it's not like that.
Great. Does anyone else have any other questions? Oh, yeah, there's one here. What does the future of biopharmacology hold from your perspective? Is it more global initiatives or I guess working on long-term?
I think it's CAR-T, Stephen.
Yeah, the cell therapies. A lot of times the academic institutions start like proof of concepts and things like that, and then we use our expertise to get there. So like CAR-T isn't necessarily that new, but it's new as a therapy, and so we're really developing that. Everything you've heard in the news, like I would presume, is like the next cutting edge, like the CRISPR technology that you hear about all the time, gene editing, all that stuff. It still needs to be provable, and then our scientists take it and essentially make it into a product that's able to be mass produced and really help as many people. So we'll see. Like cutting edge is relative.
So really trying to say here is that the trend of biopharmaceuticals is more personalized medicine.
True.
So when he was mentioning about CAR T, is we're taking the actual patient's blood and just modifying certain parts of the cell and then putting it back into the patient because it's specific to the patient. So what we're really trying to do is, instead of just mass producing generalized medicines, having more personalized medicines that target, make it more effective for the patient really helps, make a greater impact. And that's why CAR T is kind of new on the cusp. From my understanding of this particular concept is that it's been around for about a decade, and they have been doing a lot of experimentation and building up of how they can mass manufacture personalized medicines. And there aren't a lot of experts in the industry. So I would say this is a huge opportunity for the younger talent pool here, that if you really want to learn more about it, it's definitely an up and coming type of molecule, which will really make things a lot better for the patients overall, because not all generalized medicines work for everyone. So that's really why CAR T is like the next trend in this industry.
Yeah, to give you reference, like we talked about Opdivo, if you're not expressing PD-1 as your cancer biomarker, it's not going to work most of the time. So like, yeah, Lynn's like personalized medicine. That's the best answer for that. It's just so cumbersome. It's really hard. It's very hard to do clinical trials because you need to then have all, like, it's very, very interesting where it's going to go. So
it's fairly new. I would say because last year, I think the year before that, we had completed our integration with another company we acquired. And so now we are actually in the midst of actually trying to launch a new CAR T product. So it's something that, we, in a sense that we definitely need more experts in the field. There's a small pool of them. And so we're trying to really get them to get up to speed and understanding of like what we're trying to do. So I think it's a really great opportunity there.
Yep. If cancer science is where you want to go, oncology, I would highly suggest looking into immunology courses and immunology as your background in college, because that's really where it's going. It's fastly moving away from small molecules and into the biologics that are directly immunology related. So that's where I would focus if this is interesting to you.
That was a great answer. In your opinion, what was more valuable, education or experience, as an on-the-job experience in, I guess, acclimating to your work environment?
I'm the worst person to ask this because I think I can train anyone to do anything. So education is a great base, and like I kick myself for not remembering chemistry because like I now then need to reteach myself chemistry, but it's nothing replaces getting in, doing it, learning from experts, going to meetings, reading papers. Like you have to be really a self-starter to work in our industry, and at least in R&D. So like the actual work experience is priceless. Highly suggest doing as many internships as you can, because like I said, if I didn't do as many internships as I can, I don't know if I would have found what I did. But that was a piece of advice I got early on, was try like multiple different, I think I had 5 or 6 jobs or internships during college total. And it was awesome experience. So like just get out there, because you'll never know what you want to do until you do it. And then most people still realize like, oh, now I'm in it and I don't like it. So just get experience.
I agree on that. Experience is very valuable. In terms of education, it's a balance on where you want to go. I mean, there can be stepping stones in terms of, let's say if you do want to go for grad school and you want to switch to a slightly different field, but still be in the same industry, that you can go ahead and take that to have some accreditation or proof. But at the same time, we also, in our company, we do what we call tour of duty. So, after you've worked about a year in a position, if you're, doing very well, you have bandwidth, sometimes we will send a candidate to a different department to do a project for 1 year in a different department. And so those are very valuable experiences, ways you can shift and pivot in your career. as well. And just in a sense that experience is so important. And, you know, I know it's cliche to say life is a journey, but it is. And I know that we're all eager to jump into things and become directors or presidents of whatever. But at the end of the day, like those experiences will really tell you, you know, what are some of the foundational aspects of what you need in order to reach that level. So it's something that it's more, you suck more knowledge out of experience over education in a sense.
Yep. Remember, this is Steve Nicotra's opinion, not necessarily BMS's. Oddly enough, the thing most important that I regret with my education is where I went. Like, life is such a network. Like, go to somewhere that has a reputation, because then, or has like a huge student base. So if you want to do immunology, go find the best immunology place, because then you'll know all the leading experts in the industry. You'll know that, like, we're literally, I would say we're Rutgers next grade in BMS New Brunswick, because there's so many people that went to Rutgers that, like, they just get so many more contacts. Like, so like the school you choose is so important, because like I feel like it's harder for me because I went to Delaware Valley College, small school, Doylestown, Pennsylvania. No one knows it. There's this weird thing that goes with it. So like education's super important, but like odd things like that are important too. Like, pick a good school that has a reputation. It'll get you further.
Well, thank you for all of your answers there. With the end of our Q&A comes the end of our workshop, and we'd really like to take a moment to thank Bristol Myers Squibb and both of you for coming to our workshop to present all of that information, and also our members for coming as well. So we hope that everyone really got to take something away from this session. We'd again just like to thank our two presenters here. Your time and knowledge was greatly appreciated. And with that, we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So have a great week.